everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here for the continuation of our reviews for the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty stories with side story number 1. Like, they classify these as side stories, but there's 2 of them and they're the same article. But anyway, this is Kaito origin story number 1 of 2, A Test of Loyalty by Akemi Dawn Bowman. My quick review at the top of this one is, this seemed interesting to me. I don't know that it was like, you know, the most amazing thing I've ever read, but it's a new set, it's a new story, it's a new character, and from that perspective, I think it was enjoyable. It had suspense, it had good writing, so yeah, I would recommend taking the time and reading this one.
I agree. It was kind of a shock to the system after reading, like, the Kamigawa saga stories.
Okay.
Because it's such a contrast in, like, time and space.
Sure.
But it's cool how it kind of incorporates the 2 sort of times and aspects of Kamigawa together in this story.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what they're trying to do with this, which is cool. I think it's better than just like, oh, old-time Kamigawa, new-time Kamigawa. It kind of feels like the new-time Kamigawa is incorporating the past more than I thought it would.
I like that.
Does that
Sure.
make sense?
Sure. I agree. Yeah, and I think it was a cool way of doing it, a smart way of doing it, etc. So, yeah. So if you have not gotten a chance to read this story for yourself, this one came out a long time ago. And by a long time ago, I mean December. Like, it's like a month, 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. So like a long time ago in comparison, but still a bit of time ago, like, so be aware of that. But don't worry about it. You don't have to go searching for it. The top link in the description down below will take you directly to that article, to that story, and realize that we're only doing the first half today. The other half is a path forward. They make it very obvious when, is it a path forward? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
The path forward. The path forward is the second half. It makes it very obvious when it transitions between the 2. So if you want to follow along with us, you can stop right there at the path forward, and we'll go into that next week. Or if you want to get a jump on next week, go ahead and read it for yourself. Do whatever you want, right? You are your own person.
Oh, you have to do it this way.
And we respect however you choose to do it. But like I said, it's 1 article, 2 stories, so realize the amount of time that it's going to take. 1 story is the length of 1 story, despite the fact that there are 2 in 1 article. They are full-length stories in and of themselves, and it would take twice as long as normal to read both, so just be aware of that. I guess before we get onto the full review itself, there are 2 things that I wanted to do. The first is the typical, thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell if you like the things that we're doing. You can get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, and whenever we go live, which is every Monday and Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on this channel. Mondays we play MTG Arena. And Fridays, we play random video games whenever we happen to be playing at the time, which this Friday, we will be continuing our playthrough of X-Men Legends for the PlayStation 2, and also notably next Friday, which would be the 11th, I believe? Yes, that's correct. The 11th, we will not be streaming, so just be aware of that. I say every Friday, but the Friday the 11th, as many of you may know if you're fans of Magic and are aware of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, it's the pre-release that weekend, or that day. And so I will be going down and opening some product for the pre-release, so we will not be available to stream at our normal time. So please be aware of that, but then definitely stay tuned to the channel for extra pre-release content instead. So
When he says going down, he means going downstage, so we can go to our, designated sponsor Magic the Gathering store.
Correct. And if you can, safely, don't forget to support your friendly local game stores. They need you now more than ever.
Yes.
And again, that's if you have the means and the safety to do so.
Right.
Don't put yourselves out in any capacity further than that. But
right. I would encourage you to call the store ahead of time, maybe find out what their mask policy is, or to find out ahead of time your comfort level.
Exactly.
With the pre-release.
And worst comes to worst, some stores do at-home delivery, so if you still want product, don't hesitate to contact the stores or go on their website and purchase the things for yourselves, and they hopefully will be able to ship them to you if you're not comfortable going in person. And that's not just for our sponsor store, although of course you can do that, absolutely. But that's for any local game store, especially the one that you may hope to go back to someday for play. Don't forget, like I said, they could use your support. But anyway, that is the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing, bring it down a little bit before we get into the actual review. There's something that I have to get off my chest about these stories. And I don't mean the side stories. I don't mean the main stories only. I mean any of these. The way that Magic stories used to work, and I so hesitate trying to say go back to the way that that you used to do it, because so many people scream about that all the time, and they don't have the same employees there anymore. And so going back to the way it used to be isn't really an option, so I'm not going to ask for that because I'm not naive enough to think that it would be the exact same thing.
I'm going to ask for that.
Okay, fair enough. I purposefully...
I'm sad. I want it.
I purposefully try not to do that because I'm aware that it's a completely different time.
Yeah.
Why? What is the purpose of having released your 5 main stories in 4 days?
Yeah.
All 5 of them in 4 consecutive days. What is the purpose of that? For a company like Wizards that seemingly these days is trying to make their own content constantly, they have weekly MTG where they make weekly videos repping their stuff, and sure, it's to create hype about their own products. They have Gavin Verhey, who's an employee who makes a daily Good Morning Magic show. How is it that and then a company that works with other content creators, they sponsor Loading Ready Run, they sponsor game nights, which, by the way, none of what I'm talking about I have a problem with. I don't. What I have a problem with is people who on one hand seem to understand content creation. They get it. And they seem to want to foster a relationship with content creation and content creators. Why would you make your stories so difficult to make content out of? What would make the most sense? Because you released 5 stories in 4 days. So people who are reading those stories or who don't want to read those stories or don't want to be spoiled on them, maybe they want to go to their favorite content creator and watch them. Are we supposed to make 5 videos in 4 days? For the folks that do summary videos of the stories, are they supposed to do just one summary video of 5 stories all in one all-encompassing thing? And are they supposed to do it like on the day that the 5th story comes out? The day after? Like how quickly? Because for a little bit of a look behind the curtain, people aren't going to be searching for videos on the stories on video sharing websites like, I don't know, YouTube, like that far after when those stories come out. Because if episode 1 and 2 are released on the 24th, then 3 is on the 25th, 4 is on the 26th, 5 is on the 27th. After the 28th or so, you're not going to get any hits off of those searches. So content creators are incentivized to create content on those stories with all the buzzwords and the tags and etc. as soon as possible, because otherwise they're not going to get the proper engagement with their content. So I'm not talking about us here. We are doing one video a week.
We already don't get it.
Well, that's not even what I'm getting at. We are doing one video a week for the next 7 weeks. That's it. There's nothing else to be done about it because the stories deserve better.
Right.
That's really how it goes. So a month and a half from now, when the stories will have been out for over a month and a half, we will still be making videos on those stories. Is that to stretch our content? No. But who the hell has time when, for non-full-time content creators like ourselves, who have actual 9-to-5 jobs that we have to go to and earn a living off of, and still want to make content out of things that we enjoy? who the hell has time to read 5 stories and make worthwhile content out of those 5?
Well, and I think that's the point, right? Is they've decided that the stories aren't worthwhile enough
And
for anyone to care.
Yeah. And it bothers me that I have to have this conversation now when, again, like I said, I'd rather just talk about the story.
Right.
The story was cool. But I also don't have time to take a week off to complain. You know what I mean? To talk about what was the purpose? And not for nothing, Akemi Dawn Bowman, who wrote these stories, she deserves better as well.
Okay.
People deserve to be able to digest her content as opposed to binge it like that. Maybe some people prefer because binge culture is what it is, but
it coming out in a logical sequence or time frame,
yeah.
can also then still be binged.
Yeah.
Just wait for it all to come out and then binge it,
Yeah.
if that's what you're into.
Well,
But it just makes it harder for everybody else.
Yeah. I don't understand. And there are a lot of different things rolling around in my head of maybe why they did it that way. The cynic in me wants to say that they made it so that content is more they made it in a way that they don't care how content could or could not be made out of it because it makes them no money.
Right.
So it's irrelevant how you would or wouldn't make content out of it because they're not going to. So it doesn't matter to them, and they're not going to, I would say they're not going to sponsor, but they have, there's that one channel whose name I forget, and it's not disrespect, it's just, I purely forgot and I apologize. But there's a channel that does summaries of the stories who was sponsored. So they were able to put their videos out the day that the story came out because they got an advanced look at the story so that they could create their content and have it released at the same time. I've wanted to do that for years, but we're not big enough, and I'm not sitting here trying to be jealous. But so they have sponsored content creators in as recently as either Midnight Hunt or Crimson Vow. I don't recall which one. Maybe it was, I don't know. Like I said, I don't exactly remember. But regardless, that's something that they have done. But again, the cynic in me is well, they don't make money off the stories are free, so why do they care what kind of content gets made off of it? Because it gets clicks to their website, which maybe you get then click-throughs to the things that are on the sidebar because they finally updated that.
We don't get to see how many views, we'll say, the first story of a block or whatever you want to say gets versus the last story.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps what it is that a lot of people are excited to see the first story, and then by the time the last story comes around, few people care. And so what they've decided to do is pack them all in so that they're hoping that we can capture your attention, and then you can read all of these stories and, stay to the end, as opposed to read the first story, maybe read the second story, and then by the time the third story comes, maybe you don't have time for it, and then the fourth and fifth just never get read.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't either. Whatever the situation is.
Theory.
And again, we've talked about this many times on this show. For the audience that they're aiming for their stories, our problem with, oh no, we can't make content for all of this that is actually going to get it watched by people who are not amazing subscribers, and thank you so much, for people who are going to come back here regardless, right? But if we want new viewers in addition to our loyal viewers,
right,
who we definitely really, really appreciate. But if we want new people, we have to get the things out when they're being discussed, aka day of. Well, I'm sorry, the videos come out when I'm in the middle of my workday. And so then I've got to rush home, read the story with Amy
The stories come out.
What'd I say?
videos.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just don't want them to get confused.
I appreciate it. The text stories come out midday. Well, I'm at work.
Right.
I can't do it. So
most people are.
So, and then by the time we would have gotten home, filmed the video, edited it, put it up, you know, what are we going to release it at like 10 o'clock at night? And, you know.
What about when two come out on the same day? Like, what are we supposed to do?
It was insane. So,
how many
anyway,
videos do you want us to make?
So that's our problem. And I would not blame you if you go to the comment section of this video and you write in, you guys are just complaining. That's fair. It's a problem that affects us. But I'll ask you to look at it logically, because that's what I'm asking. How does it make any sense from a content creation perspective? Not just us, any Vorthos content creators out there at all. How are they supposed to cover your content and promote it, right? Because it is self-promotion, right? We don't work for Wizards. We don't, now that the arena preview events or whatever you want to call them are done, we're not sponsored by Wizards ever anymore.
Correct.
Would we take a sponsorship from them? Absolutely.
Yes.
That's not the point. But it just boggles my mind, and I don't understand it. From a business perspective, I don't get it at all. So if people have ideas or thoughts, because we've presented some, but who the hell knows, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below.
If you actually know the answer.
Well, I don't know how you would, but
if you've spoken to someone who knows, like maybe you know somebody who actually works for the company, or, you know, can actually tell you that. I don't know if they can, but
anyway.
Regardless.
That's what the comment section down below is for, but more importantly what it's for, and let's transition back to the actual reason that we're here today. We would love to hear your opinions on Kaito Origin Story number 1, A Test of Loyalty, in relation to just your own opinions on the story, or comparing and contrasting with some of the thoughts that we're going to bring for you here. One of the things that because we're going to transition, I can't do it anymore. So we're going to talk about something that is
no point in it.
Actually enjoyable, because in all of this stuff, I didn't have any problems. Like, typically I'm like, you know, sometimes I'm like, well, this didn't make any sense, or why was it written this way, or it doesn't mesh with this. I didn't have any of those issues at all.
The arts don't coincide correctly with the story.
Right. So I didn't have that problem at all this time around, which I appreciated greatly. So what I like is, story starts as, I mean, again, this story was released in December. A month later, maybe a little over a month later, all 5 of the main stories are released, as we talked about. So this was released well prior to that. I mean, you had a long time to kind of germinate on these. In between, you had the saga stories, but those were much shorter. So, excuse me. So you had some time to digest these origin stories. And so this story starts with kind of letting us in on some of the things that are happening on Kamigawa these days. More specifically, some of the bad stuff, some of the not so great stuff. Specifically, the Emperor being missing. Now, these days, and we'll talk about it a bit further into our analysis, now that we're at a point where the cards have been, many of the cards have been spoiled, at the time of recording, not all, but many of the cards have been spoiled. Or previewed, I guess. Yeah. We are almost certain who that Emperor is, but that's a different story. But the Emperor is missing. There was a stranger that Kaito chased out of Kyodai's temple, and there was like something going on there that we're not quite sure of at the beginning of this story. We get there towards the middle and the end, if you're familiar with Magic Story. If you're not, you may have no idea who he's talking about.
Okay.
And then, so, and kind of talks about the fact, Kaito, kind of talks about the fact that, you know, there's a festival going on, but he's not enjoying the festival because he's focused on all these other things. His best friend, the Emperor, is missing. He chased this guy out of the temple. He's trying to get answers about all this stuff. And he's working for these Hyozan Reckoners, because he's trying to get information from them, but he's got a job to do. And so he's more focused on that than on like actually spending time enjoying this festival. Also, want to point out second set / block in a row where there's some type of a festival going on. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to, so that's how this set kind of reminds me of the past sets. If you want to see how it's going to relate to the future sets, there's an Umezawa present already. So we heard about, I just looked up his name before we were talking about this. What the hell is his name? Tetsuo Umezawa, right? We just heard about an Umezawa in the Toshiro Umezawa. Tetsuo is the other one. Toshiro Umezawa is on the saga, right? The life of Toshiro Umezawa. He helped Michiko and Kyodai to merge with one another.
Right.
And now there's another Umezawa, Satoru Umezawa, who seems to be not the best kind of a person. Kind of a crime boss, if you will, running the Hyozan Reckoners.
I thought that's what you were going to say when you were talking about how it relates to future Magic story.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So this Umezawa seemed like a crime boss. When Kaito goes and meets with him, it's very like Godfathery, right? He like walks in and the guy's like sitting there, Umezawa's like sitting there, and he's like, you're gonna go do this for me, and I have a job for you. And Kaito's nervous before going in because, some people leave and like leave that room and they're missing fingers. That's very crime bossy, which sounds like Streets of New Capenna, which is where we're going next time. So it relates to old, it relates to new, it's very...
They did a good job of bridging that, even though I don't know that that's something anyone asked for, is it?
I mean, it's interesting, and it's definitely something where you're like, okay, kind of cool, I see what you did there, right? So I appreciate that, I thought that was cool. I also liked, you were talking about talking about what the new world on Kamigawa looks like. And we get a bit of that. I mean, almost every Magic set that we've gone to, maybe Kaladesh is different because they have the ether that, or the aether that they are able to like put into these machines and these vehicles and etc., which is more advanced than many of the other planes that we have seen or been to. But most other planes on Magic are similar to like D&D worlds or Renaissance time periods, right? Where it's a little bit more primitive in terms of what we understand today, right? But this relates a lot more to what we're dealing with in this day and age. So they talk about gamblers and some of the tech that gamblers have available to them. And you could have a little like chip reader thing or whatever that has your money on it or has your chips or whatever on it for gambling. Well, real gamblers aren't going to use those because they can be hacked and you could lose all your money. So we get that. There are tons of people. I mean, RFID readers, they sell special wallets now that you can put your cards in so that you're not having your data taken from you or whatever. And that's discussed. So it really, like, Magic Story often talks about relatable stuff that's going on in present day in the world, whether it's civil unrest or political issues or things like that. And like I say, talks about them, right? Alludes to them in some way or metaphorically relates to them. But this is like so much more interesting because now it relates to technology as well. That's not something that we would typically see in a Magic Story where...
uncommon. Yeah, like you said, Kaladesh had stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ravnica kind of did a little bit.
Kind of.
But that's kind of it.
Yeah, and so this is the first set where, I mean, again, it's so interesting because it's a new way of relating your stories to your readers, basically. Where, I absolutely get it, right? I'm not that type of a gambler where I'm that worried about those kinds of things, but it's definitely something that I'm aware of and that I've heard of people like discussing and talking about is that, hey, you don't want this tech on you 24/7. I mean, think of how many people want like Amazon Home or Google Home or Alexa or whatever in their houses where they can just say
people don't want it.
and why and
right.
why they don't want it, because it's listening to you 24/7, and what does that mean, and are you getting those targeted ads because you talked about those certain things, or are you not? It's kind of a brave new world that we're all living in, and now it's a brave new world for Magic Story where they get to like actually talk about those concerns in addition to like just day-to-day issues that people may be having.
Right.
So,
like, I mean, I know that, sitting on my computer, I was just, talking about how my friend had to go buy dog food. We don't have a dog. But then, of course, all the ads were for dog food.
yep.
And that was just me saying that out loud.
Yeah.
I wasn't searching it. We don't have a dog.
And so, and that's the question, right? Is it confirmation bias? Because, you always get those ads, but you don't typically think because you're just like, oh, whatever. Or did you get those ads because you were talking about it?
I got those ads because I was talking about it. I never got them before, and I've never gotten them again.
So that's what I'm saying. So,
because I don't have a dog.
but there will be some people who will tell you that is true, and there are some people who will try to explain it away for whatever reason, that just may be what happened to come up at the time. Regardless, I just think that's very interesting, right? That again, it's just a new avenue for Magic Story to be able to talk about stuff. So I hinted at this earlier. Kaito is a part of the Hyozen Reckoners, and he's a part of the Hyozen Reckoners completing like tasks or contracts or whatever you want to call it. And he references later on that he's really only a part of them as a means to an end. Well, what is that means to an end? Well, he is looking for information on the stranger that he chased out of Kyodai's temple. A stranger with a metal arm. For those of us who have read Magic Story for a period of time, will know that the stranger with the metal arm, and again, if you're looking at the set and the cards that have been previewed for the set already, you'll know, spoilers, is likely Tezzeret, for whatever reason. Now, we also know, if I remember correctly, from reading the second War of the Spark novel, that the Wanderer, again, spoilers again, I suppose, but, we're talking about the story. The Wanderer and Tezzeret have history. What that history is, we don't fully know. But
we don't know, at all.
But, right, but we can now kind of piece it together at least a little bit.
Yeah.
But the Wanderer and Tezzeret have history. Kaito last saw the Wanderer, aka the Missing Emperor, because again, previewed cards, the Wanderer is the Emperor, and it takes a while for this story to mention that the Emperor is female. I would say halfway through is when he first uses the she pronoun when referencing the Emperor. Every other time.
Notice that.
Oh, I did. Because I'm like, it's got to be Wanderer, right? But he never says, and then eventually he says, she is missing. But it takes a while. I would say over a quarter of the way through the story before he actually uses a pronoun for her.
Okay.
So I found that interesting because it adds that little bit of a layer of suspense. But it also realized, again, this story came out in December. The card for the Wandering Emperor, or whatever it's called, was only previewed towards the tail end of January. So you kind of had a whole month to ruminate on it a little bit.
Yeah.
You knew the Wanderer was going to be in the set, but who would have thought it was the Missing Emperor from Kamigawa? Right. So there's that. And so now we have a little bit more information, right? And we can start piecing these things together a little bit better.
Yeah, because I might have thought it was Michiko's, I don't know, granddaughter or something.
You would think that, but don't forget, we read in the saga stories that they don't do that anymore.
Right.
Kyodai decided, or the kami decided that it would be an election, or a vote that the kami take to pick the person that is most suited for that position, not like a monarchy type situation where Konda's family and descendants would be the ones to continue it. So that's what I'm saying. It's
unless they were right for the job.
sure, exactly. Unless they actually were worth. Very good point. Yeah.
Which, we would have no way of knowing.
Correct, because we don't know anything about Michiko's possible descendants. We know that Michiko was right for the job, definitely.
Right.
Much better than her father, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying at this point.
But I love that this story allowed us, just this story alone, now that we know a lot of these things, is really allowing us to piece this all together. Tezzeret's here, the Wanderer is here / not here, and so we get to kind of realize all the moving parts just from this first story of 7. I mean, not counting the saga stories. The first story of 7 stories, because you have the 5 main, 2 side, 7 stories. Kaito had an interesting discussion, and you and I then had an interesting discussion. Kaito talks about the kami, and we read in the saga stories that these kami come through the gates a lot of times and like wander in and don't really know what they're doing there. They're a little confused, and we know that the Jukai monks set up this like these elaborate structures around the ingress points, essentially, from the kami world and realm, and like make sure that they feel welcomed when they show up, and people are revering them and treating them like gods.
Yeah.
And Kaito is like,
they are gods.
well, and Kaito's like, I don't quite get it. He's like, once you see a kami like sunning themselves in a mud bath, it's kind of not as compelling to treat them as gods anymore. To Kaito, right? Because I guess to some people, gods are these omnipotent figures who are without fault and can do no wrong. And when you see them doing like much more like vain, human-y things like sunning themselves in a mud bath. But to me, I just went, oh, okay, so it's like the Greeks, right? The Greek gods, where they are flawed and they have these human wants and desires and etc. And they just kind of get the opportunity to do whatever the hell they want because they're gods. So what other concerns do they have for themselves? They can just do whatever the hell they want.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, right? Kaito had a problem with it, but I was just like, no, sounds like the Greeks to me. The Greeks had no problems worshiping those gods. So
well,
fair.
They had
sorry.
some problems.
Yes, sorry. I liked the drone. I thought that was awesome, like the origami drone that like he can like control with his mind, and
yeah, that was really cool.
it was very cool. And of
it
course,
wasn't origami, but it like folded like origami.
yes, thank you. But not only that, obviously, then the drone comes back later to help Kaito relate to Tameshi a little bit more, which was a very Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice moment. Or no, that wasn't the drone. That was the person who gave him the drone.
Right.
And the two of them were like, how do you know so-and-so? Well, how do you know so-and-so? You know? So there was that, and that again, that kind of helped them relate to one another. But I liked with the drone, again, technology being what it is. The drone was broken. Mm-hmm. Now, as a couple who own laptops where we're like, this laptop sucks.
Yeah.
But I need it.
Right.
And it works.
We have.
Yep. It works in that, we've got to fight with it.
Technically functions.
Yep. We've got to fight with it and we hate every second of it, but at the end of the day, 5 hours longer than it should have taken, we can use those laptops for what we need them for. So I truly appreciated the drone where he's like, well, I can't use this drone to find somebody in a crowd of people, but if I'm looking for one dude, this drone will work just fine. That I really appreciated. I was just like, yes, thank you. Technology is flawed. How many people out there are walking around with a crack in their phone?
That was my phone. for the longest time. As soon as I got it, I dropped it and broke it.
Yeah.
And
So
I was like, so mad. Because my old phone never did that. And I never got why people complained about it so much. I was like, what's the problem? I drop my phone all the time and I never get it cracked. Well, my phone was too old.
and well made.
Nowadays,
Yep.
when you buy a phone, the glass is awful. It might as well not be glass. It might as well be crepe paper.
Yeah. So, if your phone has a crack in it, don't forget to hit that like button. Anyway, I also find it very interesting. Kaito mentions that the Emperor is his best friend. Well, again, if we're talking about the cards, we know that Kaito is the new Planeswalker for this set. And we know, or are like almost certain, that the Emperor is the Wanderer. They're both Planeswalkers. They're both best friends, or at least Kaito considers the Emperor his best friend. Mm-hmm. We don't know how the Wanderer feels, right? We haven't gotten her perspective on it yet.
She's like, who? No, I'm just kidding.
It's like, she and we're best friends. Meanwhile, she's like, oh, it's that guy. Right? So.
Oh yeah, who is that again?
But I find that very interesting because depending on how this story, and not this one story, but the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty's stories, depending on how they end up, will depend on how we see these two again. Because with the Wanderer's planeswalking ability being what it is, she probably can't like hang out with another planeswalker because it would exhaust that other planeswalker to planeswalk as often as she does, and it would exhaust her to not planeswalk as often as they do or don't. But they could still spend time together, so like seeing the two of them together on another plane in the future would not be unheard of. They would likely be spending time together if they truly do have that close of a relationship with one another. So I thought that was kind of cool and interesting. Mm-hmm. And we'll have to see kind of where that goes in the future. Then we have, kind of towards the end, I guess, we have the Tanuki Kami, discussed and then seen. The Tanuki Kami kind of surrounded by mystery a bit, which makes sense. It's the first of 7 stories. Yeah. But it's the birth of a new Kami, a rare Kami.
I was like, what? A birth of a Kami?
Right, you would think that would only be in the spirit realm, not here, but the two realms are coming together. So it would make sense that eventually Kami are going to have to either they're going to all just die out, right? Like there's going to be no new Kami being formed, or some are going to have to start appearing in this realm because the two realms are becoming one. And we learned a little bit more about that here as well.
I don't even want to think about it.
Why?
Because it sounds terrible.
It's the two planes coming in. I think we were talking about the birth of a Kami. Like, why does that sound terrible? That sounds awesome. But no, the two planes merging as one, and then everybody having to be like,
Kami's possibly dying out, and
yes.
I don't know. I get maybe it's like a planar bridge thing, which is why they're talking about Tezzeret.
Don't ask me. Well, I guess we'll find out as these stories go on. Because then there's the Phyrexians, and how the hell's that going to work? I'm very intrigued to read these stories, especially, again, just off of this first one, where I'm not sitting here being like, this makes no sense, what the hell's going on here? Like, I'm quite pleased. So, I like that this Tanuki Kami, just the presence of it, immediately made all 3 of them, Kaito, Tameshi, and Aiko, think that it was Kyodai.
Yeah. Because
Kyodai, kind of a big deal. And now this new Kami, this Tanuki Kami, rare Kami, is here and is similar to Kyodai. So what will this mean?
Okay, it's actually similar to Kyodai. I thought it was like disguising itself as Kyodai.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think of it that way. I just thought that it had a lot of the same... features or whatever as Kyodai.
That makes more sense, because if it was just born, how would it know how to disguise itself as Kyodai, and what would its motivations be for doing so?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, because they heard this like triple layered speech from what happened to be the Tanuki Kami, but they were in a place where they didn't see it, so they all assumed it was Kyodai because that's how Kyodai speaks. And so it's not a commonplace thing where they're like, oh, it could be any Kami, including Kyodai. It's like, oh, that's Kyodai. And then Kaito chases after it, and it happens to be the Tanuki Kami. The Tanuki Kami sees him, and that's how the story ends, which I thought was a little odd, because we know nothing about this Tanuki Kami, so is that supposed to make us nervous? Is that supposed to make us happy? I don't know, but don't forget, this is one article with 2 stories.
Does it even mean that what they heard was the Tanuki Kami? Because maybe what they heard was Kyodai informing them that they should check it out. Then when they checked it out, it was the Tanuki Kami.
It's just that it didn't seem to be... That didn't seem to be an ability that Kyodai had, at least through the understanding of these 3, because when they hear it, they don't think, oh, Kyodai's giving us a message. Kaito says, wow, Kyodai never leaves the temple or the castle.
Right.
So Kyodai, to their knowledge, doesn't have the ability to like send messages across like that.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, because Kyodai wasn't at the temple.
Not the temple. Like I said, I don't know whether it said temple or castle. It might be that Kyodai's at the castle.
It said the temple.
Okay.
But still, whatever.
I don't know, and
we're making speculations,
Sure.
which is what we do here, but
we'll find out as we get closer. But like I said, I thought it was an odd ending, but because the second story, The Path Forward, is immediately after it, it makes a little bit more sense. We are covering it as 2 stories because it is blatantly 2 stories,
right,
even though it's the same article, and they decided to release it as the same article, which also didn't make a lot of sense to me, but neither here nor there. But we'll be covering that next week. So I'm looking forward to reading it now, especially after having read this one. And so, we're going to have to wait and see. But I liked this one. I thought that it was a really cool way to get us back into Kamigawa. I mean, we did the saga stories first, just based on when we were done with Crimson Vow stories, and then going into these, because that's when the saga stories were coming out, and it was a little bit quicker that way. Maybe it would have made more sense to do Origin Story 1, then Origin Story 2, and then the saga stories, but I liked it the way that we've done it so far, because it gives us a bit more of information of where we came from, old Kamigawa, to where we're going, present Kamigawa, and you have these origin stories kind of in the middle, and they're not really in the middle, right? You have like ancient Kamigawa over here, present day over here, and like the Kaito origin stories are like here, right? They're not like in the middle, they're like just before the main story.
Right. Which I think really helps.
Agreed.
Because obviously ancient Kamigawa only provides so much context for, high-tech Kamigawa.
yeah, big time.
So I think to have context here really helps you be prepared for what you're about to read next.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And I don't know, like I said, I liked this one a lot. I would love, as always, we would love, I don't have to say we would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you also enjoy this story? Did you have some problems with it? Maybe you did. Maybe we've got rose-colored glasses on because we just really want these things to be good.
No, I don't think so.
Again, I don't either. I just, if there are folks who feel that way, I want them to be able to tell us about it, that's all.
Well, in the past, and even for this video, I think we've had our gloves off for a long time in terms of complaining about things we didn't like.
Yeah. Things are frustrating, man. That's just how I
think this story was great.
Yeah.
Good writing. And like I said, I really found it interesting how much traditional stuff got incorporated into this high-tech world. Mm-hmm. I really thought that was cool and interesting, and like you said, it kind of built suspense, and it was a good sort of middling point for me, because I expected it to just be like, okay, we're in the future now. It's going to be nothing like what we've already read,
Yeah.
But It wasn't like that.
Right, and I think the saga stories, like I said, gave us a good bit of context. I mean, the Boseiju Reaches Skyward talked a lot about the Jukai Forest, and so we got to learn about that enough so that when we were in the Jukai Forest for this story, it made a lot more sense of like, oh yes, they do have to tiptoe around the Kami because the Kami are not super happy with people right now because the city is being built out and out and out, and now, oops, there's the barrier because otherwise the Kami are going to kill you all. So now we'll just build upward, and Boseiju is like, okay, well, I'm going to also be grown up. So, really, really awesome. That it all works really well together, and it's really good world building and really good storytelling. So, like Amy said, like I said, we are looking forward to the coming weeks with these stories. So definitely stay tuned. Like I said, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, obviously including the continuation of this series in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to let us know, like I said, did you read this story? If you watched this video without reading the stories, are you going to go read the story now? Because we talked about it and we were so hyped up. Because coming here and listening to these stories and trying to keep an open mind, I think, is a really important way these days to join us as we all show off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
Because I want to give the stories the opportunity to be great, and so far, pretty damn good. Breath of fresh air, quite nice. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go in the coming weeks. I hope you all are as well. Like I said, comment section down below, anything and everything that you want to talk to us about our little bit of rant in the beginning, our discussion of the story throughout, or something that we may have missed. We would love to hear from you in the comments down below.
And I would, in particular, love to hear if you were Japanese. Any level of authenticity that you're willing to either say these stories, all of them, have or don't have, or what you would have liked to see more of, or what you're happy with having seen. I would love any and all of that information as well.
So we will see you all next week for more JaAR. Hopefully we'll see you on a stream coming up soon. Mondays, Fridays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. Just don't forget, not on the 11th because that's pre-release. And stay tuned for our opening videos. We may have codes in there for you. We always do. So definitely check those out as well. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.